Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to this caregivers discussion. My name is Linda Herman, and I'm going to present for about 20 minutes, and then I'm going to turn it over to Meg Munits. We decided to split this up, and then we'll open it up and take questions and have a little discussion. So I have been a volunteer with the PKD Foundation for several years, and when I get talking fast, when I say PKD a lot, it comes out Pickety. So I might just change it to Pickety, and that's just how it works out for me. So I am the Portland, Oregon chapter ambassador. I have also had the great privilege of serving the PKD Foundation as a stakeholder for grant review for research. And of all of my tasks volunteering with PKD, that has probably been something that I have learned the most from and has been the most fun for me. So I have a medical background. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in medical imaging technology, and I worked in a trauma hospital for many years. And then I went to work for GE as a clinical applications specialist in surgical and vascular imaging, where we did cadaver workshops. So it's really nice to be in a room like this with everybody alive and living. So I did cadaver workshops and supported those, doing the x-ray for those. So I have my broad experience with many things has lent itself quite well to my family. So my family's situation, I don't have anything to disclose. So we are the Hermans. This was our past spring break, and we went to the Grand Canyon. My husband has ADPKD, and he knew that he had it very early on. His mother has ADPKD. Both his sisters have it, and he has one brother that does not have it. And 25 years ago when I met my husband, it was our second date when he told me that he had PKD, and I knew what it was, being an x-ray tech, and at that time, I just thought it was a little bit bad, and it was very variable in different people. And so I kind of went through life. I adored my husband. He was fantastic. I was kind of getting up there in age, and I knew I wanted to get married, so I was just kind of looking past that little PKD diagnosis. And as it turned out, my husband has what's called a truncating mutation, so a more severe presentation of PKD. And we went on to have our daughter, Kaylee, and she's just turned 18 this spring and graduated from high school. And she's actually going to start in the nursing program at GCU, or Grand Canyon University in Phoenix, in this fall. So I'm pretty excited for her. But when she was 5, we discovered that she had an arachnoid cyst. And so at that time I said, is this related to PKD? And they said, no, we don't think so. And then fast forward a few years, and somebody did some research on this and found that that there is a prevalence of ADPKD children that have arachnoid cysts. And so many times these are just cysts that develop out of the lining of the brain, and they don't require any type of surgical intervention. They just follow them and watch them. My daughter was having pretty severe headaches, so she went on and had what they called cyst fenestration. So that was probably, in all of my experiences with PKD, one of the worst days of my life is to find out that my daughter at 5 needed to have her skull cut open with a saw. I had worked in the OR. I knew what that sounded like, and so I was pretty terrified at that point. But like all things that happen with this disease, we try to have a great attitude, right? You've listened to all the inspirational speakers here, and I just want to say it's been very empowering to come to these conferences, to learn so much from everybody and just hear everybody's story. So we as a family have tried to have a positive approach. My husband had a deceased donor transplant 12 years ago. My daughter was 4 at the time. She was then 5 when she had the brain surgery. And so then a year went by and we were doing really well, and we thought, okay, let's get another child. So we decided to foster to adopt. And so my daughter there in the end, her name is Journey, and she came to us in foster care when she was 2, and then we adopted her when she was 4. And I very naively went to the social workers and I said, we have these health issues, so I want a child without any health issues. And, they laughed at me like, lady, we don't really care about your problems. So all the children, obviously, in foster care are there for a reason. And so my daughter, as cute and beautiful as she is, and she does not, thank goodness, have PKD, but, she had early trauma, she had drug exposure, she had all kinds of things. So she has her own diagnoses of ADHD, reactive attachment disorder, like all these things that I've had to navigate besides kidney disease. So I will say I prefer kidney disease over some of these other issues. But when we're talking about having a disease and building a family and exploring it, I feel like we have conquered a lot of things. So we've been through transplant. My daughter Kaylee in 2021, when we were in the midst of COVID, she won the Sanofi Torch Award, which is an award that's given out. She's done a lot of clinical trials. She has we volunteered at walks, and she's helped us in different volunteering aspects in all the clinical trials. I sort of taught her early on that it's okay to have your blood drawn. It's okay. It's actually very relaxing to sit in the MRI machine. She didn't always buy these things, but over time, with just a positive attitude and explaining how everything was going to work, she has always been a great help to our family, a positive person. And so she got this award. We had a film crew come to our house and film the whole thing, and it was pretty fun. But what I wanted to mention about this is they donated $5,000 to the PKD Foundation. And so, again, another great opportunity. So just to get involved and be a voice. So taking care of yourself. I think the first thing that comes to mind with this disease is, one, just acceptance. So this is a long disease. It's a lifelong disease. You have to accept it and learn to live with it. And the sooner that you can get on with that, I think the healthier your family can be. It can be exhausting. And so knowing yourself as a caregiver, knowing your limitations is also really, really important. Okay, understanding the disease, you are all here, you probably have a pretty good understanding that this isn't just a kidney disease, that there are other manifestations of this disease. And so and I will say, as somebody who works in healthcare myself, there is almost nothing that this disease presents that you can't overcome with really good quality healthcare. So you've seen the most phenomenal doctors here, researchers here, getting involved, knowing what is your choices are. We've gone to, my husband has a brain aneurysm, and we have gone to 5 doctors before we found one that would do what I asked them to do. So I can be a little bossy sometimes, but the first, he's had a lot of surgeries. He's had a lot of complications, and so when we found that he had a brain aneurysm, the neuroradiologist said, well, let's go in and coil your brain aneurysm. And so I said, okay, he said, let's just take care of this. So it's about a 3-millimeter aneurysm, and so that was sort of the plan, and then I went home and I started to think about this and research this, and anything under 5 millimeters for a brain aneurysm is very low risk of rupturing. And so I'm not a medical doctor, but this is what you can find if you research this. So anything over 5 millimeters is a high risk of rupturing. So my dear sister-in-law adopted 2 children from birth, and she also had a brain aneurysm. There's a family history of brain aneurysms. My husband's mother died of strokes. So she was in the midst of caring for her family, and she didn't tell anyone that she had the aneurysm, and she actually passed away suddenly at the age of 55 because it was just daunting to her. Her aneurysm was quite large, and they said she was going to have surgery, and she was in the midst of trying to kind of come to terms with that and what that would look like for her family, and when she wanted to pull the trigger on whether or not she wanted to have that surgery for that. So I can't emphasize enough that if you stay on top of this disease, you do all the screenings, you go to your appointments, and you help your family members with that. I think because I have a medical background, I have said, okay, I'll take care of the appointments and the medications and all of these issues so that my family, my daughter and my husband don't have to worry about some of those things. But every family's different, and what you have to give as caregivers will be entirely different, and family dynamics are different as well. So very sadly, we lost my sister-in-law in the midst of that. But when we found out that my husband had an aneurysm and we were going to get different opinions about that, I also had worked in radiology and interventional radiology, and I knew that they could coil it like the doctor wanted to do. We actually talked to a different radiologist, and we asked about this particular radiologist, and he went into this long speech about how there's this, when radiologists start their career, they have this learning curve, and then they kind of reach this peak, and then as they head more towards retirement, they kind of keep doing the same old tried and true. It didn't take long for me in that discussion to cancel that appointment that was set up. So we started getting some second and third opinions, and they said, oh, we would only do surgery. It's a middle cerebral artery aneurysm. We would only do surgery on that. And I was concerned because my husband at that point had so many surgeries. And so then I had some friends, talked to them. We found a neuroradiologist that worked at a center that also has a neurosurgeon that he works with. And so we just started to follow it. So the last 5 years, it has not grown at all, and we aren't going to do anything about it until it gets to 5 millimeters, because we know what the research tells us and we know what the data says. So, and because my husband has had many complications, we just want to keep him as healthy as possible. So understanding your personal limitations is important. Early preparation, doing those screenings for this disease is very important. And then just knowing where to go and where to get help. We were in a situation where my husband was filling with fluid, and he was losing weight. He's 6'2". He was down to 144 pounds. And our doctors in Portland said there's nothing more that can be done. This was 7 years ago. His colon has ruptured diverticula. He had a colostomy when all of this fluid issue started happening. And so I just would not accept that there was nothing more. I said that you haven't done anything, so we need to see what more that we could be done. And we went to the PKD Foundation, and they recommended we go to Mayo. We went to Mayo. We took the kids out of school. We showed up there for 2 weeks, and literally they saved his life. So in the midst of that, they took out his diseased kidneys. They also discovered that he was in cardiac failure from his fistula, which was not being used, but that is something that can happen. So they took down his fistula, and it was he ended up doing fantastic. He came home. He had some C. diff infections. I could talk to you about what that looks like. I could tell you about a fecal transplant, which is something I really actually never want to talk about again. So we have just had so many things happen to us. But at the end of the day, I'm looking at my time. Where am I at on time, Meg? I'm not even paying attention. Okay. So I had things on my slide that I was thinking about covering, and Meg is going to maybe talk about some other things. Insurance has been a big issue for our family. My husband is now disabled, and so we lost he worked in financial planning. He worked for a great company that had some great insurance, and when we lost our medical insurance, I thought we could just go out and buy a policy. Well, we couldn't. We ended up, we all have, I won't even go into the details, we all have different insurance now in our family, and my husband is now on Medicare, and that is another road that you go down and you get to that point that you really need advice on, because it makes a really big difference. There's Medicare Advantage, there's Original Medicare, and then going down that road and finding what is best for people that have long chronic issues might look very, very different than what is best for Medicare for somebody. Like my mom's 84, she has a Medicare Advantage plan. It works fantastic for her. But for my husband, we have Original Medicare, and it allows us to go to Mayo. It allows us to go wherever we want. So there's just a lot of things to manage. Medication management. This was the craziest thing. the immunosuppressant medication is paid for by Medicare Part B, so it's not even part of the drug plan. And so we live right on the border of Oregon and Washington, and so they told us we could not get his Prograf in Portland. We had to get it from a specialty pharmacy. It has to come from Tacoma, and it has to be delivered by FedEx, and we have to be home and sign for it. So prior to that, when we had private insurance, we would get it delivered through mail order, and I loved the mail order pharmacy, but when you switch and you have to have Medicare, then you have to follow all of their rules. So there have been a lot of things to contend with. My charts and my health accounts. I have one set up for everybody in the family, and because we don't live near a really large university medical system where we can get all of our health care, and because I've been picky and we've gone to different doctors, I have probably 15 my charts set up. And I have a computer, I have saved all the passwords and everything. And then the other issue is HIPAA and just trying to get records. So labs, phone numbers, all of the specialists. I wanted to talk just a moment on medical power of attorney. We went to an attorney and set up a trust, and we took care of all of these things. So legally, financially, there's a lot to go over. We could spend a whole hour just on the legal aspects of this disease and as a family and managing it. We planned ahead for this stage. We knew it might be coming. I think financially, I'm incredibly grateful that my husband had a great career and some great medical benefits, long-term disability benefits that have helped us out significantly. So there's just a lot of things to think about long-term with managing the disease. Living trust, my husband also has, in the last few years, developed epilepsy, and so we had to go to the neurologist and take care of that too. So it's been really important to have all of these legal processes in place. When my daughter turned 13, I'm trying to manage all of her health issues, and I lost the proxy access because, as your kids get older, then you can no longer access the My Chart. But fortunately, my daughter just set it all up, and she gives me all of her passwords, and I handle everything. And I just send all these messages on My Chart, and I say, I'm the wife, I'm the mother, so, help. So you can do that. You can actually get through this disease very well and live a very normal life if you accept it and you take responsibility and you just take these things one day at a time, step by step. I threw in this is probably not where it needs to be, a pillbox. The pillboxes have been incredibly important to our family, and there's lots of different ones, so you really need to get lots of pillboxes. That's my piece of advice. I was going to talk on caregiver fatigue. I mean, I have definitely been fatigued, and at one point, I have gone to counseling. I dragged my husband to counseling, and then he just talked about himself, and I got sick of that, so we stopped going to counseling there. So I say that jokingly because it has benefited us, but I think having a sense of humor about all of these things is necessary. Also, we recently went to a neurology appointment, and my husband and I were going to trade vehicles, and he's had some cognitive changes, and so we parked in different places, and we met up, and he got really frustrated with where I parked, and so we were in the waiting room, and he kept arguing with me about this parking, and so and he's at the point where he can laugh about things and I can laugh about things. That wasn't always the case, but I think we've just been through so much. But we get caught up sometimes in just bickering. So we were in the waiting room kind of bickering. And then he got the form to fill out, and it said, are you frustrated? And he put yes, because of my wife. And then the next question was, how often do you get frustrated? And he put a lot, because of my wife. And the next question was, do you have depression? And he put yes, because of my wife. And this whole form, it had 10 questions like this, and every one he wrote, because of my wife. And so we get to the appointment, and this poor young guy who checks us in is wanting to go over his vitals. He looks at the form, and I said, you can just throw that one away. They ask for these forms every time he comes, just toss that one. And so we all joked, and then the doctor came in, and we all had a good chuckle out of the whole thing. This is, my daughter did clinical trial in Kansas City, and if you've ever had the privilege of going to the university there, this is an amazing display that they put there, and I believe it's for Jared Grantham and all his work for the PKD Foundation, and it's just a beautiful light display. Reminds me of kidney cysts. And I don't know, how can I play this? Which one is it? Oh, okay. I had to throw this in because I live near Portland, Oregon. Oh, I'll get it to work. This is what it's like to care for somebody with PKD. You have to be able to do everything at once. We're missing the volume, but this is the Unipiper, and he's playing his Unipipe, yes. So I'm going to turn, I could probably just go on and ramble forever, but I'll turn it over to Meg.
Thank you so much, Linda. We can have a lot to learn from you. You're like the poster child for a caregiver. Yes.
We'll be taking your kidneys later.
Hi, everyone. I'm Meg Munits, and I am one of the ambassadors for the New York City chapter or community. So I was just going to talk about a little bit about my family and the journey that we've gone through. So this is us. My husband and my 12-year-old son have ADPKD. He's the middle one. Just recently, my oldest and my youngest sons were genetically tested for PKD, and their results were negative, so that was very exciting. I knew since I was pregnant that my son had ADPKD because his kidneys were enlarged at the 20-week anatomy scan. And sure enough, when he was born, his kidneys had cysts, so he was diagnosed at that point. And then for about 2 years, I was totally freaked out because I was trying to figure out if the version of PKD that he had would manifest very aggressively, because that's what all the research was saying. And I really just, I was running all over the place, different doctors getting different opinions, and I just had to just accept the disease and just be like, okay, no one knows what his trajectory is, and we're just gonna take it day by day. And I'm kind of embarrassed to say that I was actually looking for symptoms for him, because I felt like, okay, well, if he has something, then we can treat it. And I had to realize that that was kind of a selfish attitude, and if I really wanted to control something, then I had to take ownership of that, and I had to do the controlling. So that's when I decided to go back to school and get my master's in nutrition. And then we lived in the city, we lived in Manhattan, and we just had to move out of the city and put him in a place where there was trees and grass, and just really provide the best life experience for him. So the role, before I get into nitty-gritty, I want to acknowledge that the role of a care partner can be as varied as the person who has PKD. Therefore, the relationship between the person who's giving the care and the person who's receiving the care will also be very different based on your personalities, the situation, history, finances, disease state. Just knowing that you are caring for your partner, your parent, your sibling, other family members, your friend, your child, what you're doing is you're giving your love and support, which positively impacts their care management, their quality of life, and their mental health, even though it may not be so evident. For all the care partners in this room and online, I recognize you and I thank you for your invaluable role in the health, wellness, and care that you give to someone with PKD. Okay. There are many points in time when people's PKD journey begins. For those with PKD, it could be upon diagnosis, it could be onset of symptoms, or the reality of taking care of a family member with PKD. For caregivers, the beginning may or may not be very dramatic. The weight of it tends to ebb and flow, either by your own design, or my own design, or by those who need us more as the disease progresses. For my story, my husband told me about his diagnosis after we'd been dating for about 6 months. His only symptom at the time was high blood pressure, but his father, who also had PKD, had been on dialysis for 10 years, and his body was starting to shut down. He was a 60-year-old in an 80-year-old's body. Luckily for my husband, he had me at a hook, line, and sinker, so of course I would love and support him, cysts and all. Similar to most jobs, it helps to have traits and skills that match the roles and responsibilities. And I think that I was called to this role because I would be good at it. Most likely my husband thought that too. And when I'm not being good at it, it's important for me to recognize that because many times that's when the burden is usually the worst. The next milestone occurred when my son was born, which ended up setting the tone for our family. At the time, my husband wasn't seeing a nephrologist and never wanted to talk about PKD, even to his primary care physician who was treating his high blood pressure. But I understood where he was coming from, as he was manifesting his family's legacy that PKD was a dirty little secret and with a fatalistic outcome. When my son was born, I fought hard to rewrite that narrative. I convinced my husband to enroll in an observational clinical trial so that we could see where his baseline was without compromising his medical record, as crazy as that sounds. I also volunteered to be one of the New York City's community ambassador, along with Sarah Giller, and together we worked at establishing a safe space where we could gather and talk about PKD because, as we know, it can be different for each person. And it was important to me to also open it up to caregivers and anyone else, not just PKD patients. That's us at a walk. My latest milestone is that I graduated with my master's and became certified as a registered dietitian to specifically work with families who have children with PKD and other forms of chronic kidney disease. This is just my story. I know for certain that this room has as many milestones, such as Linda's, that have changed people's lives for the better, or else you would not be here right now. So let's talk about you. In 2018, Dorothy Oderhan of Otsuka et al. Published a qualitative study in which 139 PKD caregivers in 14 different countries were interviewed and surveyed. The study originally sought out to survey the burden on parents of adolescents with PKD. But based on the responses, the project expanded to also include caregivers of adults with PKD. The results of the study were republished in December with additional details and insight. I added the QR code here, which will take you to the article if you'd like to read it later. These circles represent the top 4 areas of caregivers' lives which reportedly impacted by PKD. 74% of caregivers' emotional well-being are impacted. 38% reported their social lives are affected, 26% had decreased productivity at work, and 25% reported reduced sleep. This graph is taken directly from the article and lists additional areas of the caregivers' lives that were impacted beyond the top 4. And even takes it a step further and breaks down the percentages down by caregiver relationship to the person with PKD, such as parent, spouse or partner, and child. My goal of sharing the study with you is not to stress you out, nor is it to add any negative associations to anyone with PKD who is supporting your care partner. So if you're feeling these emotions right now, please lovingly tell yourself that it's okay and this is not what this is about. I'm sharing this with you because I want to tell you that you are not alone in your thoughts and feelings and emotions and physical manifestations, and to bring attention to the areas of our lives that are commonly impacted so that we can take the time and effort to address them. Many times we are just in survival mode, trying to get her done, and we don't really understand why we are on edge, why we're not getting our work done, and why we're not able to fall asleep at night. This is a pretty heavy list of psychological and emotional manifestations which can result with the responsibility of caring for someone with PKD. I've attempted to lighten the load with some memes, which my 12-year-old said were totally cringe, but he's not here right now, so he's not going to ruin the vibe. Most of the emotions expressed in the article, with maybe one or two of my own. We have stress and anxiety of our loved one's health status and risk of worsening health. We're worrying all the time. We have guilt of passing PKD down to children and future generations. Sadness for the person with PKD and the stress and anxiety in their life. Anger, frustration, irritation when the loved ones with PKD are not taking care of themselves, and hopelessness of the situation, no cure for the disease. All right, social life. Many of the implications reported in the article focused on not being able to participate in social activities as their loved one's health started to decline or symptoms reared their ugly heads. I've also added a couple of my own, which I struggle with from the very beginning, such as what to tell friends and coworkers. My husband is not out to a lot of people due to professional and personal reasons, and then here I am advocating for my family and the community, so it's been really tough for me to tell a story to tell people. Sometimes I'm very vague, and sometimes I tell my son's story with his permission, of course. Most people don't know it's a genetic disease, so I can strike that balance with respecting my husband's privacy while fighting for my son's well-being. I wanted to merge the work productivity element under the finance umbrella because let's just put it out there, it's expensive to have PKD and with little payout at the end since life insurance is rarely attainable. For our family, the insurance premiums are so expensive. Every year I have to estimate what tier makes the most sense for our out-of-pocket costs, and it's usually the most expensive choice. Then recently I made a wrong judgment call. I was insisting that my husband get an MRI at the same institution that his doctors are part of. I thought I was being smart about his care, but that was a $1,500 mistake. It turns out the insurance company had a preferred imaging center in which they would have covered most of the costs. So it's like these decisions that we make, we think we're making the right choice, and then we get kicked in the butt at the end. This topic was not This topic was not addressed in the article, but I wanted to discuss it because it became an important part of a caregiver's role. Linda did an amazing job sharing what she has learned in managing this aspect of her role. A lot of time and research goes into finding the best care for PKD, including multiple doctors beyond nephrologists that are knowledgeable about PKD, such as liver doctors, GI doctors, cardiologists. The PKD Foundation has done an incredible service to our community by compiling centers of excellence to guide us with doctor selection. I know some of these centers are not accessible to all, but they can be a source of reference for your nephrologist. Some people in our New York community see their local nephrologist for most appointments and then visit a nephrologist at a center of excellence once a year for a second opinion. Also, if you're on the nerdy side like me and want to read about the latest research about PKD, you can set up Google Alerts that send you an email every day or once a week that gives you all the research articles that mention PKD. And then you can also search Google Scholar, which gives you access to PDF files of articles that you may not normally have access to. This is something that I recently came across and thought I'd share it with you guys. If you're really into tracking labs on a spreadsheet, the National Kidney Foundation has a spreadsheet tool that lists most of the kidney-related labs, and then when you enter the value, it generates a graph of each over time. So if you want to scan the QR code or go to their website, it takes you directly to that spreadsheet, and then you can just save it to your computer. So caregiver fatigue. The article mostly talked about the physical symptoms of caregiver fatigue, such as tiredness and caregivers' own personal health issues that arise as a result of not taking care of oneself. However, I've noticed a few more for me, which I have tagged on. I have a tendency to get very overwhelmed by social media. I realized recently that all the people I follow and all the groups I follow are PKD related. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's too much. So I had to add on some additional things like salsa dancing or something more whimsical so that I wasn't just always bombarded with PKD. because sometimes PKD just overwhelms my life, every aspect. And I was joking with Linda that sometimes when I get mad at my husband, I was like, I'm doing this all for PKD? What happens if we ever get divorced? What's my life look like? So it could just be very overwhelming for me. It's all aspects of my life. I also get tired of being the bad cop all the time, telling people what to eat, telling them what they should and shouldn't do. And I don't know if I should be mad at my husband for this or not, but he and my 12-year-old will sneak off sometimes and go to Taco Bell. And I don't know if that's a bad thing, like he's teaching them like a bad habit, or if it's their way of like just enjoying life with PKD. Let's see. And then strategies. Really for me, figuring out the when and how. I used to struggle a lot with anxiety, and it was something that I realized that it was too late to address it at the time. So I try to find little things in my life that try to prevent the anxiety from setting in. And it really depends upon like who you are, what you like, what works for you. And every day I try to do some sort of exercise or movement. Sarah and I do a Pilates class together once a week. So it's really just about finding the things that work for you, and then slowly building it into your life so that, you're never like driven to that end point where you're just going crazy. So of course it's like all the things like hydration and sleep and exercise, and then just sometimes it's just about taking it one day at a time. So this is the picture of my son when he was born, and I was, of course, like I said, freaking out. And then these were just some of my favorite moments when I would just sit with him when he was sleeping, and it just made everything okay. And he told me the other day that, he said, do you know that humans need 8 hugs a day just to maintain happiness? So that's our new slogan. So we all line up in the morning and at night and give hugs. So that's my story. Thank you very much. Thank you for the foundation for inviting me to speak, and thank you all of you for attending. Any questions? Sure.
I'm clearly an older caregiver, beyond where you've been, and I think another strategy for me was learning how to set boundaries and accept that the PKD person is a person, and they are going to make choices for themselves that we don't have control over. So the whole anger, I mean, I've been there 1,000 times, like, you're not eating right, you shouldn't be doing this, why aren't you out for a walk, like 1,000 things, but at the end of the day, they have to make their own choices, and kind of letting go of that is a strategy that helped me, and I'm doing this with my kids. So they're always making the choices I want them to make, and so it's kind of just being able to step back and say, this is their choice, and so that's helpful a bit too.
Yes, I agree with you on that one. And that was a hard one to come to realize also. And then the other side of that is when people outside of the situation, you say, well, why don't you have them do this, or why don't you have them do, and then you feel like you're getting judgment on top of that. That's hard too. So thank you for acknowledging that.
Just remembering to value yourself at least as much as the other person. So, and more.
Yes. I haven't quite gotten to the boundary part yet. I'm getting there. My therapist is working on it with me.
There's a donut festival going on at my house right now because they're like they are thrilled when I kind of like the police, even though
The bad cop is gone.
Even though I love chocolate, flour, and sugar myself, but when I leave, they don't stick with. It's just all out the window. So yeah, and it's probably good for them to.
Yeah.
It's good for everybody. I think to me, sometimes we have all these ideals, especially when you have a disease, right? You want to follow all the advice. You want to fix it for them. So you want to make sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. But you can get so caught up in that you forget to actually enjoy the journey and enjoy life. So you really have to just learn to let go of some things and not be so worried about everything.
Yeah, that's good advice
Not
too.
everybody can do the keto diet. Not everybody can maintain those things. And my daughter had a lot of GI issues as part of all of this disease. So trying to maintain a special diet for her would have been, so her and I did keto for 1 week. It was just too restrictive. It was hard. So, try to present information in the positive light and allow her, as she's growing up, to make those choices for herself too is really important.
Yeah, and something else about like that, all the dietary advice and restrictions, you don't have to do it all. Just one little thing can help, just switch to oatmeal from like Rice Krispies or something, like cut out the processed food and just every little thing helps. You don't have to do it all.
My daughter's working on intermittent fasting. The doctor said just 2 days a week.
Yeah.
She said, oh, that's something I could do that's really, really easy. I can stop eating at 8 p.m. and then I just won't eat, until noon or 1 o'clock the next day. And she said, that's easy for me to do. I just hadn't really thought of it. So
Yeah.
just making those small changes that are easy until you decide, okay, maybe I want to take on more.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree with that. Any other questions? Well, thank you so much, guys. We really appreciate it. Thank you for letting us tell our stories. And enjoy the rest of the day.